Good evening. The Design Review Board number 2 public meeting of October 20th, 2011 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed for a particular case must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at .ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Garagos?
Here.
Board Member Malikian?
Here.
Board Member Sakai? Here. Board Member Zarifian? Board Member Zarifian is not able to join us this evening. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on October 12, 2011. Oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not have any oral communication cards.
We do not have any.
None. So that takes care of that. And then in terms of the review calendar, we have a few information items, yet I believe we will move those to the end of the agenda, which brings us to the design review cases for this evening. There are 3 of them. We would like to make note that the second item on tonight's agenda, which is case number 2-PDR 2011-035A, this would be for the project at address 3577 Emmanuel Drive, is being continued due to improper noticing. This matter is being continued without further public notice for 2 weeks. So please note that on your agendas. And what we would need to do from the board is to actually make a motion to continue for 2 weeks. And the second and
make a motion to continue that for 2 weeks.
I second it.
I have a motion to continue by Board Member Garagos, second by Board Member Sakai. Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously 3-0. And at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to our Chairman Malikian.
Okay, so we're going to go down the list, and we have 2 items left, and the first one is the 1500 Alameda Avenue. Are we ready?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you stated, the project is located at 1500 Alameda. The reason why we're here today is because there was a landscape change or deviation that took place and was discovered when staff was out doing a final DRB inspection for the project. And as you know, while the Planning Division does make every effort to work with applicants and property owners to resolve issues that arise during construction, when a plan significantly deviates from the design approved by the Design Review Board, which in this case took place back in February 24th of 2005, at that time it was approved with conditions, the planning staff does not have the authority to approve the project. And that's why we are here today, because that is actually protocol. So again, due to the significant deviation from the approved design as proposed and constructed, that's why we're here to review the plan. The plans are here before you. I've explained in the staff report in detail. There's a chronology. There's an explanation in terms of an analysis. There's no change to the footprint, the site planning as it relates to the existing footprint or anything like that, or the design of the building. Again, strictly landscaping, so that's why we would like the board just to focus on the modifications to the landscape design. I have put up the plans behind you, which reflect the as-built conditions, as well as the previously approved plans on the far right.
The far right, the bottom one is the...
That is correct. There is a note that says that it was approved by the board, and those were the plans that ultimately were submitted during plan check and approved as well. So staff is recommending approval on the as-built landscape conditions. Again, while it is the landscape plan is very attractive, very handsome design, however, again, staff does not have the authority to approve such a significant deviation. And so again, that's why we're here today. And there are some recommendations or conditions that staff has noted in the staff report. If there are any questions or clarification, please let me know. However, again, my presentation is pretty straightforward as to why we're here today.
Do we have any questions for staff? Okay.
Oh, one more thing I want to highlight. Regarding condition number 2, was to require a landscape buffer along the northerly interior setback as it was originally proposed and approved by the board, and a species that is not invasive or undermines the structural foundation of the house. Staff did note some recommendations in terms of what can be planted in that area. We have consulted with both in-house, or meaning city landscape architects and outside architects, and they have advised us or consulted with us and advised us of what kind of planting would be conducive in that area. One of the reasons why, and it is mentioned in your staff report, that condition was made originally by the planning hearing officer when this project obtained a variance for floor area ratio. And that particular condition was imposed as a result of the neighboring property to the north who
So if
was
that
concerned about
condition
it.
was proposed by the variance officer, wouldn't that be a requirement that needs to go to the variance?
No, I will defer that question to our assistant director.
Yeah, the way the variance condition is written, it really gives a lot of latitude to the design review board to decide what is appropriate. There is some landscaping required, but I mean, it's up to you to decide whether, how much or what is really appropriate to the site, and I think you can.
So let me get this right. If we decide that what they've changed and eliminated the landscape buffer,
I don't
and
think
that would be-
I think everything's short of total elimination. The way
because right now the way it's shown, it's like they don't have any landscaping.
Right,
so
that's
if we
right.
agree that, like, let's say if we like what we see here, like just this is for everyone to hear. What happens then?
Are we allowed to, does it need to be because it was on there?
there needs to be at least
Something, yeah.
some greenery,
Okay.
whether it's just a vine on the existing wall.
So it kind of goes
elimination.
beyond our jurisdiction of eliminating any landscaping.
Right.
Okay.
But you can go right
Because
up
of
to
the
that
variance. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and, yes.
What is there now? Because there's no photos of that north side property line. Do you know what's...
When I was out there, there was no landscape between the house and the property line. There is a fence.
5 feet tall?
I don't know how tall it is.
As tall as you...
There are some photos on the dais.
Yeah, but there's no photos
In the back area.
Oh, okay.
specifically of that area. So I don't recall when I was out there, which was over a year ago, there being any landscape in that particular area.
I went to go look at it, but you can't see it from the street. So these issues that were concerns of staffs, like the water feature and then the variance on the north side, since they're not visible, it's sort of difficult to comment on it without knowing exactly what I'm looking at.
The water feature is actually facing Chilton, which would be on the street side.
Right.
However, it may be behind the fence. So obviously staff took the pictures and did not actually get on the property and take those particular photos. However, I would like to make note that although staff did comment about the water feature in the report, but there was some sort of water feature also proposed in the original design that is pinned on the board.
Well, I guess getting back to so there's two issues, or three issues. One was it deviates greatly from the original, which if we like it, great, we say it's fine and we approve it. The second issue is the variance for this planting on the north side, and we need to put planting back per the variance, and it could be as simple as a vine or as complicated as mass planting and a hedge and trees and whatever. And the third issue being the fountain that's currently installed, maybe using it more water than I think
You're verifying with her, or you're
I'm
just-
asking the question because it's in the report that it's a concern that it uses more water than is
Correct.
recommended.
We don't have information as to whether they use recycled water or not. Maybe that would be something that we can ask the property owner, only because, again, we're concerned about the drought-tolerant issues that we have here in the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Doug Mobley? You state your name and address, please.
Doug Mobley, address is 1500 Alameda Avenue. I was just trying to dig up, see if I had any pictures of the north side there. Basically, the bone of contention has been that the neighbor didn't want us to look into his windows, so he put that requirement on. He picked 18 large 50-foot tall trees that we had to plant on 30-inch centers. That's what's been holding us up now for 3 years, is we didn't think that was a really good idea. The house, the space is about 4 feet wide, between our property line and the house built in 1925, and the trees he specified, which were orniculi, whatever they were, but they're big trees, not small trees. On that side of the house is also all of our electrical service, our meter box, our breaker boxes, our water heater, a tankless water heater, several windows that are, operable for egress, etc. And so if you put a tree that grows 2 feet in diameter in a 4-foot space, it can't have clearance away from any of the utility equipment over there. So there's required setback for the plumbing, required setback for the water heater, required setback for the electrical boxes, required setback for the windows. That's what we've been basically battling. When we were putting in the fence initially, the neighbor, by the way, no longer lives there, so this is all basically a moot point. We're shielding it from someone who lives in some other who knows where. We'd like to find where he lives. We can put a tree halfway between the two just to make him happy. But right now, it's not going to help us from looking in his windows. He had us put in obscured glass, so we have no view to the north. That was put onto the requirements. And so it's basically a whole moot point. When we were building the fence, he actually asked our contractor if we could make the fence, 10, 12 feet tall, and put, to obscure so that we couldn't look into his windows. By the way, his house is higher than ours, so he looks into ours. We see a ceiling if we look through his windows.
Believe it or not, I remember that meeting. This is
You
like
do?
6.5 years ago.
It was a long time ago, and that was like, he basically held us up for 4 years getting our permits in the first place, because every time we'd get approval, he'd file a grievance.
Let me ask you this question, and we know that we have 5 minutes, but I can go ahead and... are you done?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. The requirements came about from the variance process, and we looked at it in their design review with the landscape plans that you brought in. Now, you understand, if we agree of what you're proposing, then you're going to have variance issue.
So we were willing at the time, we went to the city and said, okay, we can build the fence higher, we can put up a trellis, put plants on it, whatever. Putting the foundation of the house comes out 2 feet into that 4-foot space. The foundation of the fence comes out a foot from the other side. We've got about a foot of dirt in between the two foundation walls. In that space is a drain tile because we get black mold whenever we have a wet year on the interior walls of the house. We've always had a drainage problem.
Right.
The house has had a drainage problem since probably 1925. So we're sort of loath to dig up the drainage tile and the cement because we'll have black mold growing on our interior walls. not the best thing in the world. And again, there's all the utilities there. There's no access. If we put anything that's in the ground there, short of just a vine that clings to the fence.
And the utilities that you're saying that it's there, was it there prior for you to start the construction? So
That's where all the water heater was originally. Originally, it was a tank water heater. We put a,
that when you agreed to put the plans, somebody didn't really follow through with
That was like-
issues with electricals and other stuff.
and foundation wall. We've been pointing out that, most plants require dirt under them, and there's no dirt under here because the foundations come out from the house more than halfway into the space, and they're about 2 feet thick. So there's a giant cement. It's basically cement underneath the pavement there, except for a strip about yay wide, of which half of that is drain tile. So it's been an impossibility since the beginning. So what we've been always saying is which code you want to violate. The building, the electrical code, the plumbing code, the fire code. We'll put, it'll violate all these codes if we put these plants out there, or the giant trees that he had specified. We had not specified that. We had nothing to do with that. He actually picked the plants. He came in here and said that was the plant to do. I remember that someone asked him, well, aren't those horribly messy plants? He said, well, you get the male versus the female or whatever.
I guess our challenge here today will be is to figure out what are some of the issues and find a resolution.
We'll throw some vines on the
So-
wall, but we can put it in outside the area. We can, trellis them across from either end.
We'll talk, and I'll ask you to come out. We have a question for you.
This is the plan that you submitted for your original, the plan that's up on the wall. That was one that was approved by the DRB. This is your planting
That was
landscape plan?
basically a sketch. We had all the plants, prints that we have don't have that line of trees. The line of trees was done for the last meeting.
Well, there is
So-
a hedge on here.
No, that's actually a line of Potocampia.
Well, it could be a tree or it could be a hedge. So
Yeah.
you're-
Those are trees, if you look them up, they're large trees from South Africa. They grow about 50
Right.
feet tall, 30 feet wide.
But-
The
You
recommended
put it on the
planting-
plan, though.
You put it on the
You put it on
plan.
the plan.
We did not. We had to put it on the plan to get to
It's
the
on the
neighbor.
plan.
It's on the
though,
plan
right?
that you
It's on the
submitted.
plan.
Right. Our
Landscape.
neighbor picked those. We did not want to put them on the plan. We objected at the time. They had them put on. So
You agreed to it, though. You agreed to it.
because we had been going for 4 years trying to get.
I'm just saying, you agreed to do something, right?
We agreed to
And you
do
put it
something
on the
because we had
plan.
been fighting for 4 years with this guy.
That you, I'm trying to understand. I'm not saying that, you we're going to fight you on it.
After
but I just want to
4
understand.
years, we were desperate.
So then after you did this plan, something down the road, you decided not to go
Well,
with this
no,
plan? and
we
you
said it
wanted
was
to-
insane from day one. We
But you-
said it was insane at the point. We said you cannot plant trees over cement. It will not work.
I agree with you, but I'm just asking what happened, why this was, or how this came about, and then what happened to it subsequent to then you changing it to what you have currently there. You didn't like this plan, you decided to do something differently, or you just,
No, it's a choice of either knock the foundation out, the plans.
Well,
all the-
not specifically
that,
along
the
there.
entire-
The entire.
Oh, just the plan? That was a rough sketch that was done quickly. We basically follow the plan. If you look at the plant layout, they're about the same. It's just that the guy who put the plants in used a slightly different palette. If you see the
Right, the-
thing we have printed, we've actually just won an award for xeriscaping statewide. And so it's not like, this guy actually is the fellow who teaches xeriscaping to cities in California, including our neighbors in Burbank.
great. The water feature that you have shown, which we haven't seen a picture
It's a
of.
fish pond.
What is it? Yes. It's a
It
fish
has,
pond. Is it recirculating?
Yes. Yeah, currently it has 4 goldfish. We've been as high as 7, but a couple of them committed suicide, and we think raccoons got some others. But
Yes.
we're down to 4 at this point, and we'll probably put a couple more in.
Would-
It has a little waterfall that's maybe knee-high at one end, just to keep the water.
Minimal, there's no splashing outside the water
No, it isn't.
area.
We occasionally have problems, just this time of year, some of the plants are dying off, and we have a fence at the end to keep the fish from committing suicide into the drain, where the recirculation pump is. And I don't know if whoever looked at the thing, that sometimes plants clog that up, it goes up a couple of inches, and then it starts leaking, goes over the top. We then clean out that, and it's back down to where the water level's supposed to be.
You've been maintaining it, and
We maintain the
conscious of
thing.
how much water you're using. It sounds like you're very environmental. You're using a tankless, and you're got
The
xeriscape
house is
plants.
completely recycled wood. All the wood we use was recycled. And we have no paint on the wall. It's all clay interior.
So you would never use a fountain that would use a lot of water that
No.
splashed and had to put
No,
new fresh
it
potable
basically
water.
burbles is what it does.
Right.
It's not like a big splashy fountain.
Okay.
So I built those, or do control systems for those for a living, but no, that isn't what it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So, Dr. Carolyn Rowley? Are you? Okay. Lee Adams? Can you state your name and address, please?
I'm Lee Adams. I'm a landscape designer and the landscape consultant or design consultant to the LA County Arboretum. I'm currently involved in water harvesting and designing a project for the county as a showcase to teach people how to use low maintenance, low water gardens. I just saw the garden on Alameda and was bowled over by citizens taking that kind of initiative and doing something so beautiful, so effective, and for me as an educator, a teachable moment. This is something that can teach other people how to reduce their water use, how to be environmentally safe and sound, and to provide a better future for all of us. And I just would like to speak to that they've done an extraordinary job. I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't want more of what they've done.
Thank you.
And if there's any specific question you have for me.
You have a question? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Rubik Torosian?
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. My name is Rubik Torosian, resident of Glendale since June 27, 1979. Over 6.5 years ago, I was one of the residents in the area that came and spoke against the project. At that time, I said I did not want to overlook at a house across the street, two-story house. Basically, I just spoke against the project. And I was influenced a lot by the neighbor on the north side of the property. And at that time, he mentioned that he had health issues and he didn't want for them to block the sun, and he wanted them to put buffers. This is everything that you're seeing here. All I want to say is within the last 6.5 years, I've seen a change. This house located at 1500 Alameda, it's a unique house. Less than 5,000 square feet on a less than 5,000 square foot land. They built something that every single time I have guests coming to my house, and a lot of my friends are either architects, attorneys, engineers, they all are fascinated by this house. I don't know what is going on the other side, on the north side. I'll leave it up to experts, the homeowners, but all I know is from the south side, which is where I'm located, 1442 Alameda. It is just a beautiful house. Late last night, and they never spoke to me about this, even though I got 2-3 weeks ago, I got a mail from the city, and also at my parents' home, basically all the, anyway, we got 2 different notices that if you want to talk against or for this project, for us to show up here. I said for sure I'm going to surprise them, and I'm going to come here and talk positive about the project. But I forgot all about it. Late last night, I was typing up a report for my son's class, and Mr. Mobley knocked on the door and said, if there's any way you can write a couple of lines about what you think of our project. I said, I'll do better than that. I promise you I'll be there. What time is it? 5 o'clock. So all I want to say is they have done a wonderful job. If there are a handful of projects in the city of Glendale that have seen a great change since 1979 or 32 years, one of them is at least this property. Even though I rather look at the mountains instead of looking at a 2-story house, but at least it's a beautiful 2-story house. I don't know much about Mr. Mobley's wife, but Mr. Mobley himself, I see him almost every morning walking his dog, and he is one of the nicest, cleanest people that I have seen in the city of Glendale for the past 32 years. So I leave it up to professionals to decide how to help them, because they have really helped the city. Even though across the street is Burbank, but their property is in the city of Glendale, and we should all applaud them as a homeowner. They have done a wonderful job, and 6.5 years is a long time for anyone. Even though it's great we have this here, but they have better things to do. They have a beautiful daughter that I think they rather spend time with than just coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Carolyn Rowe. Please state your name and address, please.
Carolyn Rowley, 1500 Alameda, Glendale. And should I just begin, or do you have questions?
Yes, no, please.
Okay. Well, so the neighbor mentioned 6.5 years. It's actually 10. It's been 10 years from the time that we began this process till currently today. 10 years. August was the 10th year. And I've written about this to the mayor that, frankly, this is ridiculous, that it's been 10 years that we've hit walls every step of the way. And as you've already heard from the neighbor, who initially felt one way, but then had a change of heart after we actually spent time, a lot of time, to present something that is aesthetically pleasing to everyone. When people, all the neighbors pretty much, it's a gathering place. When we're out there as a family, we're actually doing it ourselves. We don't even have a gardener. We go there ourselves as a family, and we're picking the leaves, and we're making sure that everything is properly maintained. Nothing is wild. It wasn't planted as such. Unlike other native planting that you may see, and I know that before the board didn't want to approve it because they were afraid that it was going to be something that was wild and had that uncared for look. But if you went by it recently, prior to coming here, you would see that it's properly maintained by 2 adults and my daughter who's 12 years old. We do all of it. We don't even have a gardener. So if I speak with, a little edge, it's because I'm tired. And I mentioned that to the mayor, that this 10-year process has been exceptionally stressful on me. Like the neighbor said, we have other things to do than to be up here every single time that you prefer to listen to a disgruntled neighbor because of a view versus looking at what we've actually done. We've submitted documentation from neighbors showing you their point of view, how they feel about it. We've also submitted that we actually won an award. So to say that that we're wasting water, that's atrocious, because we just won an award from CCLA, one of the highest awards from California, that our project is sustainable. That is because we spent a lot of time figuring out what we're going to do. When you asked my husband, and you kept getting at him about the plan and the original plan and why this and why that, frankly, it is what it is. We're here to talk about what we want. I pretty much want this to be over. I need for there to be approval so that we're done. We can take that blue sign that's been hanging on the window, that whenever we have guests, what is this blue sign? It's been hanging there for over, 4 years now, because we can't get final approval. I want the landscape to be approved. Check. It's done. It saves water. We pretty much have to what do you call it? Sprinklers go on about every 2 weeks for a short period of time. I think that saves water. The water feature, as my husband said, is recycled. I need for that to be done and approved. With respect to the north side, which I think is the issue at hand, the problem is that before we began construction, no one knew what was going to be found. So sometimes when you approve of something, it's because sometimes you just want to be done with it. The problem is this issue did not come about until after we began the construction. And frankly, we have every right to oppose doing something that will cause greater harm later, even if it wasn't known or thought of in the beginning. And that's why we're here. So in terms of my contractor, who also came up here, and I do want to make a correction as to what Ms. Toledo said, the contractor came up and actually shared what the engineer said about planting anything in that particular area. My husband already spoke about that certain codes would be broken. I want to go beyond that. If you were to dig up and make us plant something over time, and he's already submitted something, or I believe he's already spoken to Ms. Toledo, that it would rot out the foundation. So when we prepared for this project, he actually, and I don't know the numbers, poured a lot of concrete in order to stabilize our house, found that there was great mold, and said, as a result, this needs to be concrete, because if you put anything here, it will seep into it. I thought about this before I came and said that, my husband, we're not old, we're not young. But by the time that there may be any kind of damage, we're going to be elderly. That's not one thing that I want to deal with, is the fact that I was made to do something that I think is unjust and harmful in the end to the foundation of our home. So planting something there that we would have to dig up over time would rot away the foundation, as the contractor and the engineer has already pointed out. So for me, those are the two particular areas.
Okay.
We've already proven that the landscape is sustainable. We've got an award for that.
Thank you.
The north side of the house is what's at stake here right now.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? That wall with the fence that's on the north side, was that you added that during your construction?
That is a beautiful feature that we put in, because before then it was chicken wired and it was low.
Okay.
So when I didn't mind doing it. It was an added expense, to be honest with you. It completes the house.
Yeah, no, I think it's
And
beautiful.
it was actually put up at the highest level that it could be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have any more cards, and we don't have any more questions?
No.
Okay. Public session is closed.
I'll start.
Go ahead and start.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're here because of actions you took. Okay, let's just be clear. You decided not to talk with staff as you were making changes and comment with them. You made an entire thing that was different, which caused this whole issue. So the only reason we're here is because of actions you took or didn't take. So let's just be clear about that. We don't need to be spending time on this, other than the fact that you decided to make changes without telling anybody or getting pre-approval before you did it. So let's just be clear. We're not trying to make you do anything other than what you've already agreed to do. Okay? And there were time and places for you to amend whatever your approval was before you got to this point, and you didn't do any of those. So just in case anybody is unclear about that, there's nothing that we tried to do to you. There's things that you didn't do, which is why you're here today. So just be clear on that, first of all. I don't have a problem with what you've done. It's nice to what you've done. There's some stuff that you've done wrong that staff has noted, and I hope those will be corrected, like planting under the oak trees, which is not a proper thing to do. It was noted in here.
We're
You can talk
gonna-
later. You can talk, you're welcome to talk at the end.
I will open up 30.
So there's
you
things
waited
that have been noted here that shouldn't have been done, that hopefully those will be corrected. In general, I think if something is done well, it's possible. But, understand that we're here because of changes you made and you did not get them before you did the changes. What I think is interesting, and I didn't know about it, again, you built this entire wall. You obviously poured concrete there. You could have done things at the time to do a planter. You did all this construction on the side. So there was time to do something, integrate beforehand. So, I appreciate you spent a lot of time on it, and you had a difficult neighbor. It's always difficult. I've had projects where I had a difficult neighbor. But there were other times and other places you could have argued before you got to this point. So I think
what are the...
I think the comments are good. I think the recommendations are good. If you don't have problems with the recommendations, I don't have a problem with the project and with the corrections that are proposed.
So what are we saying?
I think there should be something on the north side. If it is something that could be done from the side that would then go on a trellis, I think that's fine. I don't think we can actually take the condition that has been done in variance off, so we have to do something. And if that is the least onerous, that would be the way to do it.
The variance says that the landscape plan shall be provided that incorporates a buffer to the property to the north, subject to the approval of the DRB. So they approved the plan that included planting, but it's technically, if you were, the language says a buffer could be a fence. It doesn't have to be planting.
But is
Oh,
it
it says
considered as a
landscape
landscaping?
So it's not, well, no.
As landscaping?
But it's a landscape plan. So I'm sort of torn between, this plan, because we
I thought
always
they said
ask for
landscape
people,
buffer.
we ask people to provide plans, and they don't provide plans, and we say, okay, we approve this project, but you have to submit a landscape plan, and then staff will review it and accept it or not accept it. These people decided to provide a plan with very detailed, this is the kind of plant, this is the place it's going to be at, and now we're holding them to this plan because it was approved. So it's sort of like you're damned if you do, and, then people won't do it. So we won't get what we want.
Let's take one step at a time. Let's go down the list of the 3 items that staff has recommended.
Okay.
Let's go down the list and let's,
Planting plan?
are we okay with the planting?
Yes.
Except I guess around the oak tree.
So
I'm okay with under the oak because I feel that the plant material they selected will not interfere with the oak tree. But I don't want to say that I'm not an oak, not an arborist, I'm not an oak specialist. I do have concerns with planting under oaks when it's improperly maintained. That could happen in anyone's home. So we don't.
They had made a recommendation that they have an arborist. Do you want to have that or not? They have an arborist check it?
I could go either way.
okay, so what's either way? We
Like-
need specific.
I don't. I would probably not have asked for it, but if you guys feel that you feel more comfortable that they have one,
I'm not an expert in trees.
I'm not an expert either, so
I'm
defer
gonna
to the
listen to you
arborist.
and, okay, so, and then I'll give my thoughts.
well, I'm not an
Okay,
I'm
so
not an
the second
arborist, so I
item.
don't want to be held to this tree failed and DRB members Sakai said it was
That's why they're
okay.
saying
So
I think that's why they're saying have an arborist.
I mean, rather than arborist, I have another idea, but let's go with the second one. Require a landscape buffer along the north interior setback.
that was originally proposed.
Well, let's skip number 2. Let's go number 3 for now. We'll have a little bit more discussion. Reconsider water feature pond. Introduce recycle water. If what they said that it is recycled, then
You can
I
verify
think,
that it's a recirculating system, right?
So I think that's. I mean, I don't think they're pouring water every day, and
I'm just saying,
it is
you could-
recycling. There is a pump, and it needs to filter. So I'm pretty sure.
I'm just saying,
it's
you'd be able to do that, just verify that it has a recirculating pump, right?
I mean, even
Yeah.
a pool is a recycled.
Just verify that it has a recirculating
Well, we have
pump.
no pictures of it. We have, it's like she said, he said, we don't know what we're commenting on.
I'm saying staff could go and
Okay.
verify that there is a recirculating.
So based on
I would
the
actually defer to our staff if that's something we can do.
That you could,
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that?
Would staff be able to go and verify that there is a recirculating pump? Is that something
just go,
staff could do?
did staff look at the,
Really only if the property owner allows us access.
When you have
So,
access,
yeah.
when you're doing your...
Yeah, we
and all
could,
it is just checking to see if there's a pump. So
we'd be happy to do that.
Number
So,
3 will be verified with staff that it is recycling, and which it is.
Okay.
That should be done.
thank you.
I think that there.
And
there
and number
is
4 is
tolerant
it is
planting.
drought tolerant, so I would take number 4 out. As far as number 1, I would say, I mean, it is, to me, it is obvious. It is, and that they've chosen proper planting, but I'm not an expert, so I would not comment on that. But I would recommend for them or have maybe city arborists to go out there.
We've already done that. That's why we put that condition in there.
And what did they say?
They ask for an arborist.
They were the ones that advised staff that to have the property owner
But there's hardly any planting underneath, so that's what I'm
submit an
like, there's
arborist
like-
report.
So I'm not really understand if there's hardly any planting under it. I mean, there's like.
If I may, I haven't looked at the planting plan that closely, but taking the applicant at their word that it's just manzanita.
No, it's succulents.
Well, okay,
And
at any
rock.
rate, what I was about to say is we do have a 1991 guide from the California Oak Foundation about compatible plants under and around oaks, and manzanita is listed as being okay.
Well, then I think we should be okay then. So I guess number 1 is out.
Okay.
So here comes number 2.
Still want to be held. She said, but you can.
So as far as number 2, I appreciate the information that was given to us in regards to the foundation, and Mr. Girgos had a great point that if the planting was proposed by you, we didn't ask for that. It was proposed. I mean, the drawing, you keep on saying no, but the drawing is given to, we didn't draw the plan and put it in front of us and say, we will approve this plan, and you have to accept that. You brought the plan over to us for us to review that, and we approved it, assuming that you've spoken to some landscape architect or someone requesting that. Because you have to understand, when we approve a plan, whatever you put in front of us, we approve that. We're not questioning how they came and where they came. We're assuming that you have made the decision and you're comfortable with it, you're accepting, you're bringing it in front of us, and you want us to approve what you're presenting. And that's what we did. Now, and Mr. Girgos mentioned, obviously when you were pouring the foundation for the retaining wall, there would have been areas and possibilities of creating pockets in there to be able to plant these trees against the wall. Now, we're at this point, you've built the wall, you pour the foundation for the wall, you build a building, you pour the foundation for the building. And obviously we can't really eliminate, because if you do, then it's going to give you a lot more headache, because then you have to deal with the variance, because that is part of the condition as far as the variance is concerned, which Mr. Foy explained.
Hello, I'm Fritz Coleman, inviting you to my comedy benefit for the Glendale Crescenta Valley chapter of the American Red Cross. It's at the Glendale Center Theater, 5:30 and 7:30 on Sunday, November 6th. 2 shows, best comedians, television in Las Vegas. Only one way to get tickets. Call 818-243-3121. Just call. It's the only way you can buy them. 818-243-3121. The wonderful comedians we have every year from Las Vegas and television. I'll see you there. It's the 20th year. Man, I am old.
Welcome to the Look Ahead, which covers meetings and events scheduled this coming week. A listing of city meetings with live air and replay times can be found on DTV6's website at www.glendale.tv and on the bulletin board airing daily on DTV6. Please note that some of these meetings may be canceled or
Retaining wall. Now,
I'm so confused.
again, I'm not really the expert, but that would
go to building and say, oh, well, that's impossible, we can't do that because of the code or whatever other overriding issue. And then
Well, the
they're stuck in a-
proper
they're stuck in a-
go back and have it
proper
revised.
procedure should have
back and have it
been
revised.
the proper procedure. My understanding should have been that when they dug the ground and they figured out there's going to be a retaining wall there and there's going to be a footing for the retaining wall and everything would have been stopped. They would have taken the plans, erased those planters, came back to the staff and say, we want to eliminate this planting, give us the okay and sign off before we pour the foundation and before we pour the slab. Are we going to be okay with this? Not make the decision of, okay, we're going to be fine, I'm just going to eliminate this, I'm going to build a wall. That would have been the proper procedure for you guys not to be here at that time.
So this-
But now we're here, so...
This is applying to the DRB approving that then, not us now. Number
Sorry?
9. Number 9, that's subject to the approval of the DRB. Landscape plan should be provided property to the north. That's the buffer, which is the planting.
Right,
That's approved. That's what we're dealing with. But no, we're
Right.
okay.
right.
You can't eliminate it, you need to
Right.
do something.
To do something as a
You have to
landscape
show
buffer.
something.
I don't think we have the power to eliminate any of those items in the variance. I don't think it's enough.
You have to provide
power.
something, so we're just trying to decide what that element
Well,
would be.
I'm just, I guess, wondering if semantically you can say, well, it incorporates a buffer, and if we approve the new buffer, is that then
But it says landscape.
Yeah, I don't think you can say a fence is a landscape.
Semantically, you can. There are a lot. We've
That's fine.
actually. Well, wait. Let me finish. There are a lot of ways to interpret a sentence with two clauses. We have consulted with our legal advisors on this to make sure that we have the proper interpretation of that. And what they have told us is that the landscape plan that has been requested is subject to the DRB approval. So you have a wide range of latitude as to how, so you've approved the podocarpus initially. You have a wide range of latitude as to how you can modify that condition of approval, which was a condition of the DRB approval back
I have
then.
no problem with that. Is that a landscape buffer?
Well, the legal advice,
I see what
that
you're
we
saying.
have gotten is that if it is possible to provide some vegetation along that wall.
I see where Mr. Kai is going. It says landscape plan shall be provided. And so a landscape plan should be a landscape for the entire site. And within that site, you could propose that there is a fence and there's a walkway and there's no planting. So it doesn't specifically say there's a landscape buffer. It just says buffer.
Wait, and I'm only bringing this up because I think that the fence that they did, which I think is also
I think it's
on a wall-
beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I think
It's a beautiful
it's amazing,
thing.
yeah.
And to add planting to it would be a maintenance,
Right.
not nightmare, but it would cause more maintenance, and it could cause water problems
Right.
to
That's fine.
the house. And so that's why I'm saying I would probably say, that's fine if no one else has a problem with, gee, we have a fence here and there's no planting, because they have planting on the rest of the property, so it's not an issue of they don't have any plants.
If you're
And I'm
comfortable
okay
with
that, but I
what
don't
they
want
have,
to
then
go
I'm okay
against
with
the,
it. Yeah. If you're comfortable with that, then I'm fine with it. Yeah. But
Where do you mean the conditions? I didn't see the conditions.
oh, it's right here.
how tall is this thing?
As long as we don't put them in a. I'm sorry. Sure. So you gotta approximate, and correct me, you can nod, you can't speak, but you can nod. I say about maybe a 2-foot retaining wall or a 3-foot retaining wall, or okay, so a little bit lower, 18 inch, and then you got a 6-foot fence on top of that. So about a
Okay, I'll take back what I
About
said, because I was
8
going
foot,
off staff
7,
report, and the
8 foot
wording
wall.
is differently.
Higher?
I
Shorter?
didn't
6
catch
foot?
this.
okay.
Yeah, I'll take back what I said. This is very vague. I agree, I didn't see that.
Now, do they need a
Good mark.
permit
I agree.
for the fence?
It's completely vague.
We're not.
Okay.
We're not even. Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm not even getting.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was very vague?
No, it was clear in your staff report, but actually, I didn't see the actual conditions.
Okay, that's fine.
The conditions actually only say that. I was reading off of your
Oh, okay,
staff report.
okay. Thank
It
you.
says that a landscape plan would be provided incorporates a buffer to the property to the north, not a landscape buffer.
Okay.
So that's, okay.
Thank you.
I take that back. It was very vague in the approval.
I mean, I
Okay.
think that it would actually be more aesthetically pleasing to not have planting on the wall, on the fence.
Now, as a defense to what, if we're going to go this route and say, okay, on the original landscape plan that we approved, there was no fence proposed there.
Right.
There was
So
only-
that's
there
the other
was,
issue,
so
is that they've added a new element, and does
They
that...
added the new fence wall in lieu of the landscape buffer. So there is that justification on our part.
Could say then the fence should come out, and they could put landscaping
Okay,
back
we've beaten
in.
this one to death. I make a motion that we
Wait, I
approve-
can't make a motion. You got to make a motion.
I'm going to make a, I said I was making a motion.
Okay.
Case number 3604-R, approval with whatever our own conditions.
Staff's going to look
We are, there's going to be an arborist. This is my motion, you do what you want. I think we do need an arborist for the oak tree, just to be, because it was, staff has looked at it. This is mine, you guys can modify it. I think staff has already looked at it and said it needs one, so I'm not in a capacity to say no, I don't think. The buffer, in the report it says landscape buffer, but in reality, the approval says buffer, so that's fine. Staff is going to verify that there's a recirculating pump, and we're comfortable that the planting is drought tolerant. So we could remove 4. Staff is going to verify 3. 2, we were comfortable with what is there, and 1 is going to have an arborist. That is my motion. Who would like to second it?
I guess I'll second it. Just to get on with it.
Okay, before we, just to make sure that we have the language correct, it sounds to us like Board Member Gallegos is asking for 1, to contain the language as it is in the staff report, submit an evaluation report prepared by an arborist which evaluates the oak tree environment compatibility, and it talks about what the evaluation should include. Item 2 is staff to verify that recycled water or a recirculating pump is in use for the fountain. And for item 3, the existing condition along the north side can remain as currently constructed.
That's fine.
Actually, the last sentence says require a landscape buffer, and I think the board was require a
actual
landscape
conditions.
buffer along the north side, and I think the board was leaning more towards provide a buffer as part of the overall site landscape plan.
Well, the variance
To not necessarily
is
have
not,
to be landscaping.
Yeah,
It
variance
doesn't say landscape.
doesn't say
Okay,
landscape.
so that
Just say buffer.
condition can read, the condition along, or the situation along the north side can remain as is, as the existing fence provides the necessary buffer.
Yes.
Per the variance.
Per the
Per
variance
the variance condition.
condition, right.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second.
Want them to speak before we
Do we
move?
want to do a roll call?
Do you have anything to add? I mean, I can go ahead and, it needs to be very quick. Okay. I'll go ahead and open the session. I have 30 seconds.
So my only question is, at this point, we still have that blue sign. Does your
The only
motion...
2 things needs to happen is you just get a letter from an arborist, and also have staff, schedule with staff to come out and look at the pump on the circulating pond, and we should be done.
Those are the only
And
two
the
elements.
blue, you can have a party of removal.
Burn the blue tag.
Burn the blue tag,
Thank you.
right?
Excuse me, I believe that the blue sign has to do with building permits. Yeah, that's kind of a separate process.
But I
Not
guess,
for us.
I guess not for now.
In order to get
the tag.
through with this process, you need to do those 2 items. Then you can go
And then
off
you
and
can
do it.
call your
Okay.
final
But once we
inspection.
give final sign-off, then you move through the rest of the building permit
Yes,
process,
we don't
whatever
deal
that
with blue
is.
signs.
And that's what the blue sign
Tags
is
aren't
about.
ours.
But you have a fabulous landscape to entertain in, so that would be great.
Okay, I had a motion.
Okay.
Do a second?
Roll call.
Was it seconded?
I seconded.
Okay, cool.
Roll call, please. Who's doing the roll call? Anyone? Anyone?
Do you want me to do it, Stephanie? Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Chairperson Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
We're going to take a 15-minute break. We have several letters that we need to read for the next item, so we're going to be back at 6:30. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. 2700 Piedmont, we had a chance to review all the letters, and now I think we're ready. I think Willie is going to be taking care of it.
Yes, thank you. Chairman Maliki and board members, the case before you is case number 2-PDR 2011-004A. The project site is located at 2700 Piedmont Avenue. It is a corner lot of approximately 10,300 square feet. The site currently has a duplex at the north half of the lot and an existing single-family home designed in the storybook style on the southern half of the lot. The proposed project includes demolition of the existing duplex on the north half of the lot, maintaining the existing storybook home on the southern half of the lot, and constructing a 4-unit townhouse-style development pretty much where the existing duplex now stands. This particular project, given the site and the corner location, how Piedmont wraps around as opposed to being the intersection of two streets, is actually Piedmont has dual frontage. There was a variance applied for, and that was granted in June of 2000 of last year, which allowed for reduced setbacks along the easterly side of Piedmont Avenue. The variance conditions included the maintenance and preservation of the low-scale river rock wall that you see in the photographs behind you. And so, again, this river rock wall would be required to be maintained as part of the project approval. This variance also pointed to the fact that the existing storybook house is eligible for historic listing, and it would need to be maintained and preserved according to the Secretary of Interior standards. In regards to the site plan, if you'd like, I'd be more than happy to come up and describe that just briefly.
Yes, please. Do you have any material board?
Yes, I do. This would be the material boards. Here are aerial photographs, but they're the same ones that you see on the screen. Photographs of the neighborhood and additional photographs taken of not only the project site from all various angles, but the neighborhood development patterns as well. So. Okay, the site planning basically is a result of the site constraints on the property. You'll notice here's Piedmont Avenue, how it wraps around the corner. The existing storybook house that is being maintained. Actually, show it on this one. The storybook house that's in the southwest corner of the project site. There is an existing oak tree, a very large one that you see relatively. Not in this photograph, actually. It's in the photographs that you have in your hand that is going to be removed. There's another oak tree that is to be maintained to the interior side of the storybook house, and another one that's to be maintained at the corner location, and that's listed on the landscape plan. The maintenance of these oak trees, in addition to the existing storybook home that's to be preserved, sort of limits the development of the building footprint, and so this is basically reflective of these site constraints. Forgive me, the oak tree that's behind the storybook is to be maintained, this particular oak tree as well. And unfortunately, the one that is located by the driveway is to be removed. And that has been reviewed by the city's urban forester, and there are mitigation measures that were included as part of your staff report.
So they're allowing them to do that?
They are allowing for tree removal. They will be paying into the oak tree fund, and so it is allowed to be removed. Again, the building's footprint appropriately reflects the unusual angled corner while also taking account the existing storybook residence and the protected oak trees on site. The project also addresses the street edge by providing stoops, and you'll notice here, based on this plans, they have stoops that the northerly unit faces Piedmont, and then you have 3 stoops that actually face Piedmont on the side streets. The proposed podium design, however, there is a slope on the lot going from north to south of approximately 8 feet. There is a podium-style subterranean garage that's proposed, and then the townhouse is directly above. The proposed podium design floor plan of the townhouse-style project could be staggered to better reflect the site's topography and improve the massing. Also, the open space that you'll notice on the site plan here, the common deck is somewhat just squeezed. There isn't very thoughtful consideration given to it. It looks more like they are making do of the leftover space, so the open space for these units is a little bit redundant and could be reconsidered. Nevertheless, the overall proposed building footprint and its relation to the street appear somewhat well conceived, given the site.
The open space is above the structure. Is it is it elevated above the ground, or is it ground level?
The open space takes advantage of the subterranean garage podium. So essentially, that where the podium garage level sticks above grade, then you have that open deck, and that open deck is what is going to be used for the open space for the required open space for the units. There is a small common deck area that is also proposed. There is a requirement that there be 12 feet minimum between the existing storybook home and the proposed development, so they are also providing a little bit of open space between the 2 structures. And I believe that will be more on grade. The staff report then goes into the mass and scale of the project. As you'll notice, this essentially is a 2-story development with a 3rd-story portion in the center. So you have the two center units, 3 stories in height, and the 3rd story being the master bathroom and bedroom, and then the 2-story development spanning the entire project. The building essentially complies with the R1650 standards for the floor area ratio, the height, and the setbacks as approved by variance. The building, as you'll notice, appears articulated, various elevations. The positives and negatives, the recesses, the projections and whatnot. You have the circular ends to the building as well. All of this is intended to reduce the overall massing of the building, but the uniform level, 2nd floor roof line and the overall composition of it is almost too busy, and it appears a little bit more massive than it really should. 3 stories is permitted, except the majority of the buildings and developments along Piedmont are only 2 stories, and some are 2 stories above subterranean garages. So again, the design should be reconsidered to provide a more meaningful variation and a clear architectural idea in regards to the massing per se. The 3rd main component of the staff report addressed building design and details. As you'll notice, the proposed project has been designed with craftsman influences. The existing duplex on site is a craftsman structure that's going to be demolished, and so they felt to go forward with craftsman style influence design. There are other projects in the area, in the greater surrounding area of craftsman influence, so it's not inappropriate to the surrounding neighborhood. However, the way that the building has been designed in regards to such items as the slider windows not being appropriate to the craftsman style, you have the iron balcony railings, which again are certainly not appropriate to the craftsman style. The overly ornate doors with the stained glass windows, again, what is being currently proposed in the doors, it's not appropriate to the craftsman style. Furthermore, craftsman styles typically are low-slung buildings. They're usually 1 or 2 stories in height. The emphasis is on the horizontality. So if they choose to go forward with a craftsman style, staff felt that they should actually examine a lot of the details that they are proposing at this point to be more consistent with the craftsman style, and possibly address the massing as well in regards to the overall craftsman design. If they choose to go forward with another type of design, again, that should be thoroughly thought out and architecturally detailed, consistent with that chosen style. Based on these reasons, staff is recommending return for redesign for this particular project. You'll notice in your staff report, there are 9 proposed conditions. If you like, I can go ahead and read them off. They primarily deal with the podium design style to be more reflective of the topography, to redesign the massing of the project for a simpler and clearer architectural idea, reconsider the design expression of the building to enhance the redesigned massing, replaced all wrought iron railings and garage doors with wood or appropriate materials for craftsman style if that style is maintained, use higher quality windows and doors, more consistent with the craftsman style. Again, this would be in terms of not only the operation, but the windows themselves, the materials. And all trims and doors for the doors and windows should be wood or hardy plank. We should substitute, again, the sliding aspect with either double hung or casement to be consistent with the craftsman style. And submit, last couple items would be to submit the location of the backflow preventers, fire department connections and whatnot, necessary equipment for review for staff. Second to last would be reconsider the ground cover under the oak tree canopies and comply with the oak tree mitigation measures submitted by the urban forester, and reconsider configuring the common outdoor space for a more comfortable and usable space, more integral with the overall style and design. I'd like to go back to the desk. Staff received numerous letters regarding this project. The first, in no order of preference, we have a letter from the Glendale Historical Society signed by Mr. Greg Reamer for the president. Again, there was quite a bit of interest and concern regarding the maintenance and preservation of the storybook style. I do have some comments from our historic preservation planner here on staff that I'd like to read at the end of going through the various letters. So, but there was concern again with a storybook home. The Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association letter also submitted a memo with regards to concerns with the 3 stories of residential units, the podium design, the massing of the project, quiet windows and whatnot, sort of detailing what staff goes into in the staff report, signed by Andrea Humberger. There was a letter or an email sent in by Barbara Hannigan, again in regards to various concerns that she has as spelled out in the staff report. A letter from David Villa, and this is the property owner in Unit 17 directly adjacent or facing the project site and the 3-story portion of the building, proposed project that is. There's also another email that was sent in by Minay Zadori, who also lives in the same complex. There was a letter submitted by Mr. Grant Michaels, again, who also lives in the project and is also here to testify as well. A letter from Piedmont Oaks Owners Association, and this would be from the Homeowners Association for the project directly behind that. You'll notice it is the project on the screen in front of you, just directly. When we're facing the screen right now, it's the project, condominium project directly on the right-hand side of the corner area, the larger scale buildings that are running parallel to each other.
It's 2710, right?
Correct. That would be 2710. An email sent in by Daniel Stubbs. Another letter, a detailed letter by Doug Ward. Another one from Sandra Enslow. And last but not least, a letter from the Historical Society of Crescenta Valley from Mike Lawler. So numerous correspondence, mostly out of concern and in opposition to the project as proposed. You received copies of all those letters, and we had the break specifically to make sure that you had time to read all of those items. Now, in regards to comments from the historic preservation planner, The issue with the Storybook home is the fact that there was no CEQA required for this because they are maintaining the Storybook home. There is agreement with the members of the community that the owner should indicate how it will protect the Storybook home during construction, most likely some sort of sturdy barricade rather than a normal chain link fence. The city engineers will ensure that the excavation for the garage will meet all safety codes. There is no special concern because of the house's historic nature in regards to the excavation for the garage. We do recognize, and this would be staff based on the Historic Preservation Planning Officer's opinion, that we recognize the new project will be close to the Storybook, but see this as a compromise between saving the building and allowing the owner to develop the remainder of the site. The owner has indicated the work on the Storybook house will begin sometime after the larger project is approved, but there is no timeline. When the proposal comes in, we will treat the structure as a historic resource under CEQA and ensure that the work meets the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, while also working to rectify all building code issues. Currently, right now, there is a building code enforcement case on the property. The garage has been converted to living space, even though the garage doors are still there, so they will need to convert that garage back to a garage use as opposed to any type of habitable use. And there are a few window change-outs that will need to be legalized, and those windows that are currently in the structure, such as the aluminum sliders, will have to be replaced with windows that are appropriate according to the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. We cannot force the owner to include the Storybook property in the Glendale Historic Preservation Ordinance because it requires owner consent to designate, so it is a strictly voluntary. It's nothing that the staff can require of the owner at this point in time. And the property would qualify for the Mills Act if it were listed on the Glendale Register. But again, this would be voluntary. So that concludes the comments also made by our Historic Preservation Planner, Jay Platt. Sorry for the detailed message. I know that there are a number of individuals that would like to testify on behalf of the project, but I would be available to answer any questions you might have before opening up the matter for public comment.
Okay. Do we have any questions for staff?
Not right now.
Does Building and Safety look at the plans?
Building and Safety looked at these particular plans?
Yeah.
No, they have not.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started on this. We have several cards. We'll start with the project manager, I guess. Sholi Premium.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board. Thank you for taking me first. I have to be in Pasadena at 7:30. My name is Shoik Yapremian Consulting. You have my office address and phone number on record. I initially got involved with this project more than a year ago when staff required a setback variance for the project. As Vilya mentioned, the setback variance was approved for this 4-unit residential development. Just a quick background. This project has been in the city's review process for the last 4 years. They actually submitted a 5-unit development in 2007. At the time, they were required to prepare an oak tree report, which they did and submitted and reviewed by staff. Later on, staff realized that perhaps the house at 2690 Piedmont is potentially historic, so they required that my client hires a consultant to study the historic structure. The first consultant concluded that it was not historic. Staff required my client to do another report, so they ended up hiring a second consultant, and she concluded that it was not historic. But staff insisted that it may have potential historic characters, and the options were either to do additional studies or go through the environmental review process, and EIR would have been required. So in order to avoid additional cost and time for this project, my client chose, in agreement with city staff, to maintain the Storybook house and reduce the project size from 5 units to 4 units, maintaining the oak trees, some of the oak trees, and so forth. In addition to the constraints of the existing oak trees, the preservation of the storybook-style house, later on, staff realized and interpreted that the property is not a typical corner lot property. It had a frontage on Piedmont, but the side street, it's not really a side street. So therefore, the entire frontage of the property is considered frontage, so therefore meeting the front setback requirements. So we had to file for a variance for that and an approval. We got an approval back in 2010, June. I believe that the project designer accomplished the task to preserve the single-family house, preserve the oak trees, and therefore preserve the natural setting of the site and the environment. He incorporated some of the neighborhood design characteristics as well as site characteristics in his proposed design, which includes the stone veneer, tile roof, wooden moldings, and etc. One condition of the variance was to retain the stone wall along the property frontage, and according to his design, he has accomplished that as well. The project meets all of the code requirements, including height, setback, open space landscaping. This is very much the same project that was submitted 4 years ago. So this has been in the works. It has always been a 3-story structure, same site planning with the exception of trying to preserve the oak trees and the storybook house. You have the variance approval in your files. If you look at finding number C, it indicates that the multifamily proposal would be similar to others in the immediate area, which actually being less dense than a number of apartments and condominium buildings along Piedmont Avenue. If you have driven on Piedmont, you can see a lot of multifamily project to the north and to the south. Just, you can see one in the picture immediately to the west. You have 3 multifamily projects there. The variance finding also indicates that the proposal will not be detrimental to the property or to the neighborhood, or will not conflict with adjacent uses, residential uses, or adversely affect them. At the time of the variance hearing, most of the neighbors were notified within the 500-foot radius, and they had the opportunity to comment on the variance hearing as well. I believe that the design of the project meets the intent of the design review, given the constraints of the site as described and the number of units proposed. This is a 4-unit development. We're not talking about a 10-unit, 12-unit, 20-unit project. The site is much smaller compared to other sites on Piedmont and much smaller project compared to other existing projects. I do respectfully disagree with staff recommendation for return for redesign. This is, again, simple 4-unit development meeting all of the code requirements and very much compatible with the neighborhood development. The project designer is also present, as well as the property owner, if you have additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Hagopian?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Gary Akopian. I designed the project and actually willing to answer all questions. Even we'll be glad to show a couple of things on a board if it's possible.
Sure. I mean, you have
3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes. You can spend it any way you want. Well, you guys chose
You chose to go the
second.
opposite, so.
I just picked up a couple of things that I'm concerned about. First of all, about the design. I'm not talking about the situation of what we're involved with the neighborhood, because we did the best we could, sacrifice a lot of money and go for a variance only because we want to push this building away from the neighbors and reduce the setback. So we went through the whole that 9 yards only to make nicer and tolerant to the neighbors. That's our, and also we isolate this building where put away from the building, the historical building, the rest of us, and creating some eyesore for to freely breathe for the historical building. Now, as far as the design concerned, I'm trying my best to reduce the scale of the building and a mass. In order to do that, I breaking up in fractions the entire facade vertically and horizontally. Horizontally by breaking with this line of roofs and sinking the third floor into that roof area, and also breaking on vertically to put those elements which are repeated all over, depicting each unit. Each unit has the same element repeatedly going through. Also, there is 3 node element, like round elements, which basically picking up corners of the lots. So whenever you go through that Piedmont, you won't forget the building when you see this element. As far as the materials concerned, I basically agree with the staff on this one, that they pointed on a type of windows, which is
to wrap up. So.
Yeah, type of windows, and also I might agree with the railing, but this is a fire hazard zone, I believe. I can't have a big wood surfaces. I might replace it with some different materials, but somehow relate to the wood. Have like a painted siding.
We can talk about.
Well, basically, it's any questions?
You have any questions? Thank you. Yeah, Doug Ward.
Hello. I'm Doug Ward. I live at 2710 Piedmont Avenue, unit number 16, which sits to the west and to me right behind this project. And my concern about the project is a number of concerns. Of course, the height. I'm afraid of looking out the window and looking into somebody else's bedroom. I'm still not sure. I'm having trouble figuring out exactly where everything is situated on this structure. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be looking at and how high it's going to be, if it's going to be above or below my second floor bedroom window. So that's just a concern because I don't know. The other thing I'm concerned about is I see fireplaces in this design, and I'm wondering if these are wood-burning fireplaces or gas-powered, and I'm wondering if I don't know that either. I've been living behind part of their structure, which to me has been under-maintained for the 10 years I've been looking at it, and it's a concern of mine about the future of this structure. How well will it be maintained? I'm not too impressed with what I've seen for the last 10 years. And there is an old chimney, a stone chimney that's part of the stone wall in the unit, the sort of the backyard of the, I think it's the B unit, that, whenever people fire it up, the smoke comes right up that chimney and right into our townhouse. For some reason, because of the way everything's built there, drafts just seem to draw the smoke up to my unit. I don't know about my neighbor's units.
Just to ease your mind, I don't think you can have wood-burning fireplaces anymore. So,
yeah,
that's a new.
Okay, and the other, thank you. Thank you. The other thing I'm wondering about, too, are the outside common areas, because it looks to me like the outside common area is probably going to be like right in front of my townhouse, as usual. I've been looking down on a concrete backyard for 10 years. Over the years, I've had some neighbors that, were just unbelievable. The stuff that was going on back there, and I'm just concerned that once again we're just going to have a new place that's going to be right below my window, where I'm going to be dealing with noise, and So anyway, that's just another concern I have, is just that, and I'm also just concerned about the fact that they're taking what to me feels like a cramped 2-unit dwelling and making a 4-unit dwelling out of it. It seems to me that a 2-story structure duplex would probably be adequate for the area. So.
And we also got your letter as well.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Grant Michaels.
Hello, my name is Grant Michaels. I live at 2710 Piedmont, unit number 12, right next door. I submitted a detailed letter with more of my comments. I'd like to simply focus on opposition to the 3rd story, the mass of the building. I'd like you to consider the view from Piedmont Avenue, essentially what is east of the fork. The 3rd drawing down, where you see all 4 stories, that would be completely visible from Piedmont Avenue as you travel west. I believe that the mass of seeing all 4 stories in a neighborhood that is predominantly 2 stories would be excessive for the area. I also have questions as far as the maintenance of property in general and the preservation of the storybook house. I would like to see some type of plan for that. And I do support the comments made by the Glendale Historical Society as well as the Crescent Valley Historical Society. The other question I have is one from my perspective as a board member of the Piedmont Oaks Owners Association as to how this project with essentially 5 units will be able to function as a homeowners association with 1 unit being so dissimilar. It would have different size requirements, different maintenance requirements, and I'm curious to see if there has been any consideration given to that. From my experience of having to manage the Piedmont Oaks Owners Association and making sure, following the rules under Davis Sterling, the requirements are that each unit is treated equally. With the storybook house being so unique, especially to this complex, I have questions regarding how that would be maintained.
Unfortunately, we cannot answer that question. But as far as facing this would be facing the apartments or the units. This,
Correct.
The 3rd one, right?
That 3rd one.
Okay. So I just wanted to
And
make
the
sure.
3rd story would be towering essentially 1 story above our roof line.
Right.
On the drawing in the corner.
Actually, on the top.
The top. As I understand that, that is a cross-section going through unit number 15. On the map that you see here going from the north, you don't see but the 2 buildings, or the 3 buildings which make up our complex, and the building next to it all follow the slope of the topography. There is a step down as it follows the grade.
We have the photos and we've seen the site. So.
Right. So looking at that unit there, the roof line would continue to tower over the subsequent units in our complex.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrea Hamburger.
Hi, I'm Andrea Humberger. I'm representing the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. I assume you have copies of our letter, so I don't have to read the whole thing. Is that right? Again, just kind of want to highlight, like Grant did, some of the high points. One is the setting of a precedent of a 3rd story in that area where we don't really see any 3rd stories. basically agree with all the staff recommendations. The Storybook House is of concern, and I know that Jay Platt's recommendations were stated here, but is there some way that all of that can be included in the package, or if it comes back for review, or, how do we get this documented? How do we know that these things for the house are going to be, that this house is going to be preserved, protected during construction when there's nothing written in the plans, other than it just repeats over and over and over again that it will be preserved and maintained. Also, would like to hear a little bit about the historic wall or the Riverwalk wall, whether that would need any special protection during construction. Not something I really know about. So otherwise, just agree with the staff comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Is it Lou Spinelli?
Good evening. My name is Lou Spinelli. I reside at 2710 Piedmont Avenue, number 18. I'm here to oppose a project, I think even a development in a family neighborhood of this proportion. It's just outsized. My own private hopes that somebody would purchase the property for single-family residence and incorporate the Storybook House is beside the point. Right now, there's two-family unit there that seems to meet the characteristics of the neighborhood. Designing a two-family thing or residence building would be just you could size it. Right now, there's a fallacy. The 10,000 square foot space that you're describing includes the whole property, including what's being reserved for the Storybook House. That's my assumption. So that this, 7,000 feet of residential space are being situated on probably 6,500 feet of real earth, with a 30 or 40 foot, you don't even know probably, I don't know, I hope this hasn't been approved, but to dig a 30, 40, 50 foot hole right there next to where I'm living structure, and you're promising to preserve oak trees, that the one by my house will fall down in a year. Everything runs down the mountain, whatever it does to the root structure, I don't know if that's been approved, but I would just say for joining all the people who have spoken before me and pointing out just that I think there might be some regulations for building that much of a mass on that little part of the earth and just making it stand up somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Stuart Biles? Biles.
Evening, you all. Excuse me. My name is Stuart Biles. I live at 4825 Janvier Way in the county portion of La Crescenta. I'm also the vice president of the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley. For about the last 10 years, we have seen new developments here in our valley that has been by people who do not know what this history of the valley is, nor do they seem to care to know. So that being said, I am glad to see that this particular development is going to take care to secure the Storybook House, and I hope that they're going to do a very good remodel or take care of it so that it can be preserved. And I'm glad that they're using the craftsman style of design for their particular project. They should be commended for that. Of all the styles, historical styles that would be conducive and appropriate to the Crescenta Valley, craftsman is probably the one that would be the one, if not a Victorian style. Obviously, a slick contemporary style might be nice, but it would be completely antithetical to this particular area. just looking at the plan, I'm glad that they're doing a lot of stonework on it, and they're going to preserve the stone wall around it. I can guarantee them that as soon as they start digging their subterranean garage, they're going to have more stone than they will know what to do with. And I hope they take the stone as opposed to putting it in the landfill and use it on the building that they plan to do. It seems also that there's a certain, when it comes to the massing and the design, that there's a certain Renaissance Baroque kind of formality to it that is almost antithetical to the Craftsman style. But I think that can be changed and moved around, and the use of the things that the staff has suggested, casement windows as opposed to sliders. The use of wrought iron railings, I think what they've got shown is definitely not a Craftsman style, but to rule out wrought iron railings completely as non-authentic, I think there's plenty of precedent for it. One only has to look at some of the great designs of the Green Brothers in Pasadena, and they use wrought iron railings throughout, and that could be done with its own particular Craftsman style. So generally speaking, I will refrain from discussing the height of the building. I think that's been adequately addressed by the neighborhood. But if they can, some changes in the massing, the changes in the detailing, essentially the following through with a Craftsman style design, and they would have a building that would really sing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Janica Halula?
I'm Janika Halula, and I'm at 2690 Piedmont, which is the Storybook House. We are so happy to be there. I have 2 little kids, and we love that house, and I'm so glad to hear that it is being saved. I don't really oppose it, and we're small business owners ourselves, and our landlord has been very good to us, and we would like to see this project go through for him. So I want to speak on his behalf. The only thing that I would say is the courtyard in front of the house seems to me that there's going to be the tree is going to be taken out, and then the driveway is going to come through it, and I think that would have a really big impact on the house. Right now it is kind of one of the rooms. It's the stone wall. I know that the stone wall is going to be preserved in the front, but it kind of goes all the way around the house, and it has these little like planter areas, and so I'm encouraged to hear that perhaps when they dig up the garage, maybe they could make a new wall. Maybe that would be an option, but I just would like to speak on behalf of the courtyard of the Storybook House that I think some of as you walk along our neighborhood, there are many cute little houses that have been hidden behind things, and I don't know. So that's what I want to speak towards. But I'm all for something going up next door. Something should happen to it for sure. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything to add, or?
There's a 2-minute rebuttal, actually, if you'd like.
So if you like, I mean, Joey left, so if you can state your name and address again.
Gary Akopian, designer.
Your address, please.
And 635 West Colorado, Unit 121. Now, again, I like to point that we did the best maximum to minimize density, to push the building away from the neighbors, to complement the areas that buffer areas. I want to point on the initial design that we done for this property. We built, initially we were trying to build 5 units right on the back of the same type of a monster that next neighbor we have, right to the side,
West side.
West side, yeah, to the west side and get some open space in the front of a Piedmont. That was the initial idea, but then we realized that we need that story house. It's it's a unique house, and probably everyone living in it enjoy it. And also minimize the sizes of the building, but at the same time exercise our rights to build a third floor. But if look at the third floor, it's just a small piece. Imagine if we start building three-story along the whole line. What would happen then? But again, we're so tolerant that we build only in the beginning.
I'm sorry, I
Step
didn't
back
understand what you were just saying.
Pardon?
Imagine three-story.
Yeah, three-story along the whole. Well, imagine if we try to build 3 stories.
He's not doing the max.
Oh,
I'm not doing the max. I'm
okay.
just doing a minimum that we have a rights on it. That's all.
I do have a couple of quick questions, and you don't need to give a history of, but I just need to ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you have a survey done on this property? Yes. Do you know how much excavation you're going to do for the garage?
It's minimum excavation since it's.
Just tell me what's the maximum excavation.
Maximum excavation on that. Let's assume we have a 8 foot on one edge, and it going to 0 on the other edge. So I should say, how long? Can I approach the board so I could?
I just need. Yeah, go ahead. Come on. It's important for me to understand.
8 foot on the side.
There's also an existing
This is
survey
8
of the
foot
property
here. Pardon?
on the board. Forgive me. There's Gary. There was
okay.
an existing
Okay.
survey that
I
was
will
submitted
check.
for the property.
I will check.
So imagine we have an 8 foot wall here, underground, and that goes to 0 when it reaches to the point.
All right.
So minimum.
All right.
Okay.
Now, have you had a chance to review the city arborist letter? You need to stand there. So, have you had a chance to review the?
Yeah, about preserving the 2 trees. Yes.
Right. And the tree that you're preserving, according to the arborist, literally, they do not allow you to do anything within the drip line, including placing tools and equipment or anything. Now, what you just showed me, you're going right under the drip line. Have you consulted an arborist to come up with your own plan and present it?
I haven't yet, but I would love to, since it's right on the edge, actually, the building that we built on the edge of the drip line, so we could find out
this is the line, right? Or is it back here? Because I don't have a plan.
This is our outline of the building. So it's barely touching a drip line.
So this is your outline of the building. So this is the edge.
This is the corner, yeah.
So your building is coming like that, right?
Yeah.
So this is your within the drip line.
This is not even a building. No, just this portion, and this.
So, well, your building line. I'm trying to understand based on what you're showing. So this square line with the column line, I guess, or grid line 7. Let's see. I'm trying to understand this so that where this point is. So if this is grid line 7. Assuming.
We better look at the plans or the
Do you have
grid
okay,
lines.
there
Yeah,
you go.
there it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So okay, very good. Okay. My other question is, and the reason that I asked staff about the building and safety, I have a couple of questions on building safety.
Sure.
And from, I don't know if you started your presentation or show.
Sure.
Your Premier mentioned this, that you guys had this plan for over 4 years. Has it been evolved, or have you looked at the codes? And how does it impact the design that you have?
For the new code?
For the new code.
Actually, I checked myself. I haven't gone through that plan check yet, but I've checked myself.
The reason that I'm bringing this up, to me...
You have in your mind something to tell me.
Creating a garage that has one exit. You don't have a second exit. You have a private guest parking, which doesn't have an exit. So you have other issues there that you don't have a pedestrian walkway coming out. So those are the things that it's going to represent some challenges for you on the elevation and how you're going to bring these people out.
We have elevator.
Well, not from your guest parking. Your guest parking is in a complete private garage.
Right. Then, you could walk out.
How are you going to walk out? The gate
to the
is closed.
side. No, there is no gates on the
But
walk.
you have a gate.
No, I don't have a
garage. You have a gate here. You have a gate. You need to stand back and behind the thing. You have a gate, so you come into that gate. You need to have a.
Oh, then I just taking out that gate because they could walk out and
I'm not
to the
I'm
side.
I'm not
sidewalk.
I just need to know you. Also, I'm not
They use
plan
the side
checking
check.
it. I'm not a plan checker, so I'm just finding certain things that I see. And then also, what is the? How are you proposing to do the excavation for the garage? Is it going to be piles and shoring? Is that how it's going to be, or is it going to be cut? So you're going to build a block wall? Because the reason that I'm going with this is that if you're going to do a vertical cut with piles and shoring, then you have an issue, and if you don't, then that means you have to over-excavate. Therefore, you have an over-excavation towards the storybook house and also towards the oak trees that you're preserving. So just tell me, shoring or over-excavation?
Well, it depends what our soil engineer suggests.
You have a soil engineer?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. We're on a stage of on a phase
All
of.
right. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help. Okay, no more questions? Thank you.
Oh, I'll start? Okay. Very interesting. I think in general, I don't have a trouble with the density. I think there's going to be some issues with the third floor, and it's really the manner in which the third floor is handled. I think that and I was just looking through, using the storybook as an example. What's interesting about it, in a lot of ways, and it's things that I think staff was getting towards and is consistent with the craftsman style or sort of bungalow style. They're very simple forms, and it's in some ways inexpensive. It's a plaster wall. It's a very interesting window. You might do some trim detail to it, but the third floor is tucked up into what is a roof form, and that's sort of story and a half idea where you sort of tuck things up into an attic. And I think if the elevation was treated a little bit more, what's interesting about the aerial now, it's so great we have aerials, is that just looking at it, you can sense what my issue is on it. I mean, I appreciate everybody coming from the neighbors. Obviously they have concerns because it's right next door, but your building is, pretty tough on the eyes. Okay, you're built straight wall, and that's what they have to look at. So it's always kind of interesting the play of that. But if you could take some more of your reading from the left side, some of the residential homes, but I think it needs to be treated. And I think what staff was getting at, and I agree with, is there needs to be a little bit more of an overall sense of what the building is doing. That there's kind of two ways you could take it. Treat it as a more interesting large building, and there's a lot of great examples of craftsman or bungalow-style apartments or condos that are done as a large building, sort of like a large house, which means it's a simpler form and there'd be interesting details to it. Otherwise, you take it to more of a row house, where you could really sense the separate elements as they climb up the street, which I think would be nice, and that's sort of what the neighbor building is trying to do. I think what's happening is you're kind of betwixt and between a little bit. You were trying to emphasize almost row house, but it's lost in the volumes. And I think actually if you pulled back a little bit and made a stronger sense of the form that had some elements on it that could be two-story, I think part of what you're fighting with there is you have these little one-story elements on a very large building, and I think you're fighting the scale with that. I mean, that's what's so interesting about the storybook, is that there's those elements that are kind of two-story, and then you might tuck the third floor into an interesting roof. Not that you have to do that, that kind of roof form. I mean, it's a very dramatic roof form. But I think there's something to be said. I think if you want to take it that way, there is a simpler form, and that third floor could be treated much more as an adjunct to the second floor. not treat it as a full third floor. But in general, I think there needs to be an understanding that you're in a multifamily zone, that the neighbor property is a very dramatic wall there, and that they should assume that somebody could build something very similar next door. So I think the assumption that it would be a single-story house, I think, is unrealistic. You know, there's going to be a building that's going to go next door. But it's the manner in which it's treated. And while it's a very dramatic facade there, the neighbor, there is some planting that's going on which is softening their side. So obviously if some softening could happen on your side, that's interstitial space between the two buildings could be nice. But I think it's unrealistic to have, you know, sort of an open view from 2710 across this property. So you're in a multifamily zone, you have a very strong building. So anyway, to round it up, I think it does need to go back for redesign, but I think for me, I'm very comfortable with the number of units and a third floor done properly as sort of an adjunct to a second floor, not treated as a third floor. And then there's other issues below that, but I think those are sort of my main issues.
There's a bunch of good things to this project, and I think that I'm also not opposed to the density of the 4 units, and I appreciate that you're keeping the storybook house. I think it will add to the character, the history of the area, and it's nice to kind of harken back to that history. So, speaking about the history, I think that for me, I sort of wish that you could keep the oak trees because it does have this language around that curve where you have 3 oak trees, 2 being on your property and the third being on the property south-ish. That they all tie together and create sort of that feel that exists right now with the storybook house and the oak trees and this lushness and the shorter houses that are on the lot. It kind of breaks it up before you get around the corner and you see those long multifamily units that sort of remind you, oh, this isn't just this quiet little neighborhood, it's a multifamily, and so there's a different kind of density here. So given that maybe the oak tree goes away, which I feel that maybe it shouldn't, that I have a problem with the building in terms of how it was massing and how the details play into it. It's sort of, in one level, when I look at the plan, I thought, oh, we're going to have an Italian Mediterranean style building here. It just, the massing feels like that. These circular elements, they have that feel. This staircase that goes around it that has that feel. And then when I looked at the elevations, I'm like, oh, it's craftsman style. But wait, there's elements like the railings and the doors that kind of harken back to more of a Italianate or Mediterranean style. So I think that there's a confusion in terms of what you're trying to achieve, and you're trying to maybe it's not very authentic in one way or the other, and I'm not comfortable with it being so discontinuous of an idea of one thing or another. And I think that also the forms, like Mr. Garrett said, if you incorporate more of the forms into the style, like the Storybook house incorporates the third floor into the roof. If it's a little more cleverly designed so that it doesn't feel like you're just adding another third floor onto it, the third floor could be more integrated better in a simpler fashion, and then use the details like the rafter tails, the put siding on it, balconies, that kind of the things that just kind of like break up the eye. But if you took them away, basically you have a very simple form. So I would also recommend return for redesign. I think that, what do I think? I think that if there's some way that you can look at maybe the access into the garage and keeping more of the circulation from the street, and I don't know if that's even possible to have access from the street to create another curb cuts for the driveways and maybe reorient all the circulation from the vehicular circulation so that the Storybook house isn't so hidden from the street and isn't so kind of relegated to the back of all this vehicular circulation. They don't get to use the front of their property. Maybe make that the courtyard area such that the courtyard area isn't sandwiched between two large buildings, which is you and your neighbor to the to the west. We create a nicer space, a nicer gathering space for everybody. So I'm not sure if that's even possible, but that would be my recommendation and my hope. And I guess the rest of staff's considerations about the windows and such would be also my in my view.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with the number of units. 4 units, I think if it's done well, I think it's fine for the site. At some level, what I would want to ask is some examples of what the applicant thinks of what craftsman style architecture is. I think you have a challenge. I think you have a very big challenge. I think you have a house there that, based on what it was told, outside of the city, all the professionals looked at this building and they said it doesn't present itself as being historic, but the rest of the community, the city, and everybody else thinks it is. So we have to treat it as building, and we have to agree on that. Well, I'm in a kind of a conflict of how do you preserve what's there, and how do you make an addition that complements that, and how do you make the surroundings and the architecture, the structure work with what you have, and not just become a back storage building, and the new building that it's placed in front of that. So I think that's a challenge that falls under your shoulder, and for you to present that properly to us. I appreciate you creating certain distances from the building to preserve that open space, but truly I think you have some major problems that I see. I'm not a plan checker, but I think you have a lot of code issues that I think I would recommend for you to meet with the city and understand exactly how you're going to actually build this without impeding into the structure that you have to preserve, as well as the tree that you want to maintain. You've created, areas there that I'm not sure how that's going to happen. Creating a parking space that it's blocked by another parking space, creating limited exiting, creating accessible issues that it's not really resolved. So all of these really impact the design of the building. I'm not there to look into how you're going to make all of this work, but overall, I think it needs to be addressed. We live right next to Pasadena, and I think it's a great example of a lot of craftsman homes and a lot of different examples there that I'm sure you'll find buildings that do have 3 stories and do have 2 stories and do have stepped conditions. If you do the research, you've chosen to go that route. But I think what staff has recommended as far as proposing quality materials, doors, getting rid of the wrought iron elements there, I think that's definitely going to help you. You do have conditions of site, which is approximately 8-foot drop, and then I didn't even get a chance to look at which side is higher and lower, but it seems like it's going lower onto the north side. So by creating the podium to create this flat level and disregarding the slope of the site, I think that's challenging. So to create a building that actually follows the contour and be able to, as the building behind, it's stepping down. I definitely think it's a great opportunity for us to come up with something beautiful here. I can guarantee you the building behind, designer was in existence when that came about, so I'm sure we would have been here and discussing about the building. But now we're here for this one, and I think we have a very good opportunity to make this work right and become similar to the previous project. I think becomes a gem in the community, and everybody will be proud of that. I also think that I think a visit, even though that a lot has gone by and a lot of years have been spent, a lot of times things happen and it just happens and you put it aside and you don't think about it. It seems like you're going to spend a lot of money removing that oak tree, a lot of money, and I think there's a good opportunity for you to go back and look at, because what you've replaced the oak tree with, it's really not helping the architecture of the building. I think preserving the oak tree, creating a little bit more open entryway, I think in both you're going to save money in construction, save money in preserving the oak tree, and also have more better response from the neighborhood, I think, on that end. And at the same time, you're going to open up the frontage of the driveway as you enter, and then the storybook becomes what it's there for, and you can actually see it rather than hidden behind another building. So I think there's definitely different challenges. I think the details need to be really looked at. The windows, the doors, the railings, the wrought iron gates, and I would probably treat it the same way I would have treated, when I'm doing critting at the students and on the wood, when we go to university. Then I would say sometimes it's better for bring examples of what your interpretation of the architecture is, for us to understand what you're seeing, what you're envisioning. And there's always examples done of similar type architecture, and so I'm sure you do your research, you can find it. So I think what I would ask is, where would you represent the wrought iron? Where would you, if you think that the wrought iron does work with the architecture or the specific details? I would look into the windows rather than creating one pane. I would use dividers and more traditional work. Front entry doors, I think you definitely have the opportunity to make that more craftsman door. I think post and beam details of the rafters, the support that you're going to create for the overhangs, I think that's definitely. And I highly recommend you meeting with the city and having a SOLS report prepared and know what conditions you're going to be dealing with, because if you go this route, I can almost guarantee, I'm not guaranteeing, I almost guarantee you that the other oak tree will be undermined as well. So I think you have a lot of different challenges there. At the same time, you're going to have a lot of work, a lot of bulldozers, a lot of excavation, a lot of work done. And I think you're going to have a big challenge in your hand that you agreed to maintain the wall around the property line. You're going to have a huge challenge in your hand to preserve that. Because the work that is going to go on to that site to create that 8-foot excavation, the bulldozers and everything else that is going to start digging that thing in, those walls are going to be somewhat, questionable how they're going to be preserved. And I do agree. I think creating the driveway, 2 feet away from the edge of the building, that you're creating the driveway that is actually taking you down to the basement, is like a couple of feet away from the edge of the storyboard building. So I think coming up with a plan of how you're going to preserve that, I think you'll put everybody at ease. You'll be a hero taking that extra step and making sure that building is going to be intact. Personally, I don't know if it's possible, but you're the expert, so we're relying on you to come up with that plan. And I think if we do end up approving it or returning it, either way, I think I want to have that as part of a exhibit or part of the submittal for the building and safety as a preservation plan or something that would represent and preserve that building for you. I think you'll be a hero then. I think you'll definitely. You need to think about it. Your engineers need to look at this. And it's not just putting a chain link fence around and say, well, we're not going to go 2 feet away. You're going to, by the time you're halfway done with your driveway, you're creating about a 2 or 3 foot if not more, excavation, vertical cut excavation next to 2 feet away from the edge of the building. And that's what the site plan is showing. So I think another visit, I think you're going to have to address all of these things. But in overall, I think I agree, and I don't know if you want to, we can give them specific conditions for them to, or do we want to?
Could have staff read back?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, do you mind if we go through the conditions that were included as part of your staff report, and then we can then add additional conditions as was discussed by all your comments? So. Okay, the first item that was suggested was to reevaluate the podium design and consider staggering the townhouse units to better reflect the topography of the site.
For me, as long as it says a consideration, yeah.
Consider reevaluating the podium
As long
design?
as it says consider, not a condition for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that? I'm sorry, I was reading.
The first one.
Staggering the...
Right, I'm just saying it, so it didn't become a condition. Somehow in the,
Yeah, it says,
yes. just
yeah,
someone-
reevaluate the podium design and
Sometimes it
consider,
grows when you start
consider
typing.
staggering.
That's
So
something
it would
else.
be somewhat of a consideration.
Yes.
The second one was to redesign the massing of the project for a simpler and clearer architectural idea.
Well, I don't know if you do a true craftsman, it's simpler. I think it's more detailed. I think you have a lot more.
I think there is a stronger massing that it needs, actually. I mean, you don't want to make it bulkier, but I think there needs to be a little bit more of a unifying
Alignment.
shape.
Well, would you like to go ahead and say refine the massing of the project? And this would actually, what we could do is tie that into your comments regarding incorporation of the third step as an adjunct to the second floor as opposed to, forgive me, I hear Stephanie chomping at the bit to interject. So.
Yeah, if I may, I think Board Member Sakai had a comment that was more clearly stated than what the staff report said, but was meaning to say. You said something like the massing and plan feels like a Mediterranean style, but the expression is a craftsman style, so there's some confusion in what the architecture is trying to be. I think that was really the spirit. So we're not that condition number 2 was not intended to predict or suggest a particular design concept.
Personally, I think the podium design, you're going to have an issue. Accessibility, you're going to have a major problem trying to access the sidewalk on the street. Right?
Okay, so condition 1 will be...
That's
yeah.
why I recommended for them
Okay.
to meet. So as far as the staggering and podium and all of that and cleaning that up and everything, I think that definitely needs to be addressed at some level.
I like Mr. Gerges' idea of townhouses, the idea of the row houses, that maybe each unit becomes almost separate, and then you get away from the podium. That it's breaking the box. So you're not like just parking everybody on one level. I mean, obviously they're going to park on the ground, but they're parking within their own spaces. Somehow it's a little different.
The problem is you still.
Have a
The question
podium.
is, you don't want to have all those driveways, so you're still going to have one driveway. But internally, I mean, you could still have those garages be at separate levels. You don't have
Right.
to do one consistent thing. I
and you
mean,
have
there
to
still
ramp
could be
it down.
transitions. That's what's happening next door with those garages on the apartment next door. They're at different elevations, and they're transitioning between them. So, I mean, there could still be done. There's a way around. You couldn't do it a lot, because transitioning between all those parking stalls, you couldn't do that very much, but it would be a little, yeah. I think my point was that if either, in terms of the massing, you're either going to treat it as separate townhomes, or you're going to treat it more as one building that is interesting. Interesting.
I think that, my idea was that plan should reflect elevation, that you look at the plan and you get the feeling of what style it
Traditional
is, versus you look at the plan and
apartment.
suddenly you look at the elevation, oh, it's completely not what I expected.
Right.
And there's a disconnect between, for me, the plan and the elevations.
So if the condition would read something like, redesign the massing of the project for a clearer architectural idea. For example, provide a massing that is consistent with the architectural style. Consider breaking the massing up into individual townhomes. So those would be
There's two ways.
examples.
Is that the plan has been designed for all the setback and all the zoning requirements. The elevation has been designed to meet the craftsman, so-called the craftsman architecture. So there are two different things that they're not really working together. I think a little bit of a fine-tuning of the plan that reflects some of the architecture on the elevations, I think will help, even though that you may go beyond the setbacks and beyond a little bit of the 200 or 10 linear feet of the common area or whatever is required, or whatever the case may be.
So simply put, the plan and elevation should have a consistent architectural style.
Right.
Yes, I'm just writing it down. So would I be amending condition number 2 to state that the redesign, the plan and elevation to be more of a consistent architectural style? Okay, great, thank you. This sort of piggybacks on the proposed condition number 3, which would be to reconsider the design expression of the building to enhance the redesigned massing.
I think
So,
you can
and essentially,
combine 2 and 3.
I could eliminate the third one because
Right.
it's essentially being addressed by condition number 2. The next item would be to replace all proposed wrought iron railing and garage doors with wood or another appropriate material for the craftsman style if the style is maintained.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the garage doors like that are going to be, if it's going to be a painted material, it could be almost anything. It could be an aluminum door that's painted, or
But
I think it's more the detailing of it or handling of it.
I've seen iron railing and Craftsman. I think that if it was done in that style, not this one, but a different look.
And if images were
iron
shot of something.
is appropriate.
Yeah.
The problem is that the typical picket line with the circular top, that's something that you
So we could say if wrought iron is used,
use in the 80s.
an appropriate
to the style.
design, an appropriate design shall be
Yeah.
proposed. Okay?
Can we
Design
kind
shall
of
be
roll it all into all the materials and the style of the pieces are appropriate material for the Craftsman style?
So instead of actually individually addressing higher quality windows and doors?
Well, they'll separate the windows and doors and the railings and the wood and the siding and the stucco and the roof tiles and everything else is as a finished material versus window and door material.
So that there would be one condition that focuses on sort of elements that you purchase, such as gates, garage doors, windows and doors, and another condition that would focus on all the aspects of the building that need to be designed and detailed by someone.
Well, if you put it that way, then they're going to go and open up the catalog and see what they could find locally. And they can incorporate it into their design. I think they need to look at the design and figure out what exactly is going to fit their design and let them.
So if we struck condition number 4, and for condition number 5 as a preamble to that, say all materials and details should reflect the craftsman style, if craftsman style is maintained, for a quality and authentic design expression.
That's
beautiful.
Okay.
That's
That'd
perfect.
be perfect.
And then we could continue.
So essentially,
Maintain the language that's included, like, for example, use high-quality windows and doors, so that there would be a specific example.
I mean, they are using
Well, they're
marble.
using,
It's just the style of
casement versus sliding windows. Doors that, you can go into detail. The doors in Craftsman style don't have beveled glass that's in a round
Although we
pattern.
can have
that-
vinyl windows.
staying,
We can talk about that later.
use,
Would you maintain then condition number 6, because that we heard some agreement with that during your discussion, substitute all sliding windows with single or double hung or casement windows. Should divided lights be proposed, then contoured three-dimensional grills should be used. We did hear one of the board members suggest that divided lights should be considered as an alternative. We could include that piece as well.
Yeah, I think as the building becomes more historically related, I think it wants to have more divided light. It pushes it towards that.
But again, it goes with the style and...
Right, if the style is pushing forward.
If it's appropriate, so...
Okay, so condition number 4 has been struck. Condition number 5 we discussed. Condition number 6 we could have, but consider use of divided lights. We'll add that piece. And then item 7, submit location of all backflow preventers. That's something standard that we like to include so nobody forgets it. 8, reconsider the ground cover under the oak tree canopies and comply with oak tree mitigation measures. I see nodding heads. 9, consider reconfiguring the common outdoor space for a more comfortable and usable space, more integral with the overall style and design. Now, we heard a lot of discussion about reconsidering the entrance to the parking garage portion. That would also speak to that point. So I wanted to get Vilya's input on the if Traffic and Transportation gave us any indication of where the driveway on this peculiar property was recommended.
The Traffic and Transportation Administrator reviewed the proposed project, had a few comments. The existing site plan was tweaked to address those comments. This would be in regards to the radius of the driveways and whatnot. He did not review or any other alternative proposals. He did not give any other recommendations. There was discussion made that if they're using the existing driveway, then obviously that's saving curb cuts and saving the street, saving the existing stone river rock wall, those types of resulting issues, that will now not be a concern for the board. If you so choose to present a different alternative for the driveway location, I believe also the applicant took a look at using the existing driveway not only to minimize the number of curb cuts, but also because of the 8-foot slope differential from the north side of the to the south side, there might be actually driveway slope issues if driveway was to be if the access point was to be taken off the northerly.
Yeah.
Right now, there's an existing one-car garage that has a driveway off of Piedmont on the north side. But then if you go into other areas, then again, because of the slope topography, I don't believe, we would have to have an analysis for a proposed driveway, but I'm not sure if that type of driveway would meet.
It's sloping towards the interior, from Piedmont, the short part of it.
Correct.
It's sloping towards the Storybook House.
Correct.
So if there's a driveway already on that side for the existing one-car garage or two-car garage, you could use that driveway.
You could. The only thing is that because of again, in order to be subterranean garage, they're proposing a subterranean garage. And because of that, the angle of the driveway, right now the garage just goes straight in. And because it's at grade at that location.
You chew up a lot more
Right.
trying to get
So
down.
yeah, if you don't mind turning them off as
Right.
requested in the beginning of the meeting, thank you. But, then there would be other driveway access issues.
I think that for me, that's more of a comfortable feel, although you probably have to excavate more.
And again, that's something, if the board would like to have the applicant take that into consideration and possibly do
I think
an
it's-
alternative plan.
I think it's
then-
logical where it's going to. I mean, you're accessing, I think there might be some way that area could be handled differently. You know, there might be a
That
way
it could be easily done. Like it could have it actually could have a tighter turning radius
Yeah.
in that area. So if the driveway location was moved away from the Storybook home,
Where you gave more open space to the storybook home, could you also
There-
retain the tree?
It's backup for the other garage. Isn't that part of the issue? There's like a.
Pardon?
Is it getting out of the other garage?
Let's just go straight to that.
there's
The other
actually a
garage
little bit.
strange.
Remember Malikian? The one that's on top of the perspective drawings?
That's
might be?
not, I'm more interested in this, because what it's doing is it's superimposing the survey and the site plan.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they're approximately, and I guess 2 feet, they're even less than 2 feet, and their proposed driveway cut is going less than 2 feet away from the corner of the building. Now, that's the edge of the driveway. They have to over-excavate that to be able to create a retaining wall so that as it's sloping down, and based on this, they're going to be about 2-3 feet below where they are. So they're going to have a challenge of supporting that building.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I may have opened up a can of worms because this is a complicated project and we're not going to be able to find solutions to these complex issues tonight.
No, I think they need to find a solution. Because we're not here to solve them.
How about if that condition number 9 would read something like, consider moving the driveway away from the Storybook home, maintaining the oak tree, and providing a more generous space between the Storybook house and the new project?
I think, you know, the benefit, although they're maintaining the stone wall, I think there could be a justification. You know, I mean, we're trying to keep the stone wall, I understand that, but I would be comfortable taking out a little piece of that stone wall if we didn't have to have this big driveway out there and you got into the subterranean a little quicker, you know? You pulled in.
Yeah, that's we'll as we talked about earlier.
The justification for the high end there is that you're coming into that lower section, then you get that whole back area back, and that could be very.
I think there's likely some flexibility in that. I just we would obviously, as we said before, we would reread the variance condition and make sure that we were maintaining that variance condition.
I mean, my question is simply removing that
Get
oak
rid of
tree.
the other ones.
It has a drip line, and that drip line represents the roots of this oak tree. So
Right.
once you remove that oak tree, how does that impact the wall that is right under it?
So what
of these
you know,
questions are-
we're really fortunate to have Jay Platt, who is not only quite expert in historic issues, but he does have a very fair-minded sensibility of how things are constructed, although he's not an architect or structural engineer. So we have an ability to work with the applicant to find a solution to maintain the rock wall and see if there's a different location for the driveway. If that's what you'd like for the architect to consider, we can include that consideration in the record of decision if, as it seems, there would be a motion for return for redesign, and then we have the ability within staff to bring it to internally to a meeting of all the different departments to ask, brainstorm these issues, because this is one of the more complex projects that we see.
Well, essentially, front yard of the house becomes a driveway,
So,
Actually,
which is sloping down into the
because of the multi-story boxes to the right side of the property, and the more like one-story landscape properties that are further down the street and after you get past the curve, I think I would feel more comfortable if all the massing and the vehicular access was from the shorter and the front end, because even if you have 3-4 stories, it sort of plays along that whole block of these are big buildings and they're up, they're vertical and they're big, and there's vehicular access and there's driveways and there's all this concrete next door, and you can landscape it obviously to make it not be just a building, but because you have this big setback, you're going to have a lot of landscaping there anyway to make that mass go away. Whereas the shorter side, we have not that much opportunity to put large landscaping to hide 3 stories of building.
Honestly, I think once they're done meeting with building and safety, I think that's where they're going to end up having, because they're creating an 8-foot podium, and I don't know how they're going to get down to sidewalk from there.
I would like staff to investigate whether there is a approach that could be further north. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it frees up this back area. It could also be a means of maybe making 2 masses. You know, you do two duplexes, and there's an entrance between them, and you start to see it as 2 large homes. You know, I mean, it's an idea.
They're coming out.
So, as a condition, consider moving driveway further north, away from the storybook home. If possible, maintaining the oak tree and providing a more generous space between the storybook house and the new project.
These are all considerations.
Right.
That makes a very nice common area. That would be a very nice common area.
And then another one that might capture another consideration we just heard, consider providing the entry and massing from the front or narrow end of the property for a better transition between the dense multifamily neighborhood to, I'm not sure which side that is, to the residential property, single-family residential properties to whatever direction that is. No? We don't.
It's a consideration, sure.
Okay,
Why not?
as a consideration.
Why not?
Okay. So, I know there's been a lot of discussion. There
Anything
were.
else, I'll make a motion if that's...
Well, I would also add to have the building department review. I mean, would you like us to have the proposal be
think,
brought before the building department in order to determine the viability of what's currently proposed in regards to the building codes?
I know they're not going to like it, but I'm doing them a favor for them to look at it right now.
Okay, review with the building department prior to returning to the DRB. We have a few others based on your conversation. Bring precedent examples, interpretation for the architecture for the project to be inspired by. That's something that we did here as part of your discussion. Have a soils report and prepared and meet with building and safety was another.
Consideration.
Okay, as a consideration. One item that we also heard that we can include as a condition, if you like, preservation plan should be included in the building and safety submittal prior to building permits issued.
I would like that.
I like that.
Because that way, if it is a return for redesign, we can carry that over and include that the next time you meet on the project.
And forgive me, Stephanie, did you say prior to building permits being issued?
Yes.
Or prior to coming back to DRB?
No. Prior to building permits being issued. Yeah.
Structurally,
Yeah.
we will not be able to analyze. I mean, if we ask them, then we'll allow the building and safety to make sure that what are
So that's a long list of conditions. I think we have them documented, if you'd like.
my considerations.
They're primarily considerations. This, just to remind you and those members of the audience, in a return for redesign, because obviously that seems like the direction you're going, we do try to do our best to outline what are the concerns of the board. So it really does help us be able to work with the applicant prior to have it coming back to you and then be able to analyze how the response was once for when it does come back to you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to PDR 2011-004-A for return for redesign with the comments and that we so noted.
I second it.
I have a motion made by Board Member Garagos, a second by Board Member Sakai. In terms of roll call, Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, 3-0.
Okay, we have minutes.
We do have minutes. These would be minutes from
September 15, right? Wow. Almost
minutes from September the 15th, and all board members were present.
Yes.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
I have a motion by Board Member Sakai. Is there a second?
Just give me 1 second.
Sure, no problem.
Yes, I will second it.
I have a second by Board Member Garagos. Roll call, Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Motion passes to approve the minutes of September the 15th. And at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Stephanie Wright. She has 2 staff announcements.
Okay, there are 2 information items. I would recommend that the zoning code updates be carried over to your next meeting. I just wanted to highlight some of the issues that are included in a very large package of zoning code updates that were approved by council on August 23rd, a couple of which, not that many, but a couple of which will affect the work that you do here. One of them is a narrowing of a property from 80 feet to 60 feet for which a circular driveway would require a variance. So if you have a property that's less than 80 feet wide and you want a circular driveway, before an applicant would come to you, they would need to apply and receive a variance. Another one has to do with review of decks. We'll provide for your next meeting at least the staff report so you can review and look at some of those issues and highlight what those issues are. On the discussion of what do the boards and commissions want to see on the city's web page, that's maybe something that you can think about, and we can have a discussion on this the next time we meet. The city is thankfully redoing our entire website, and the DRBs will have their own page. We have our own ideas about what would be really useful for our applicants to see on your page, but we'd like you to think about what you would like to see there. So those are the 2 that are listed. I have another announcement that the North Glendale Community Plan and Design Guidelines were presented this past Monday to a special meeting of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommended to the City Council to approve the North Glendale Community Plan. If you recall, it was a fairly complex plan with a lot of different pieces to it. Made some very specific recommendations on the zoning, particularly the zoning for Foothill Boulevard, with the recommendation that the height on Foothill Boulevard be a straight 42 feet. So that recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council. Your recommendation, which was different, would be noted to the City Council as well in the staff report. And the Planning Commission did also recommend, just as you did, that the comprehensive design guidelines, which were revised per your comments, be adopted citywide. So that recommendation will go forth to council as well. That we hope to bring that to the City Council in early December, with materials to be online earlier than that, because it's a lot for council to review. And there were a fair amount of specific zoning pieces that the Planning Commission made recommendations on. If you were interested, the last 5 or 10 minutes of that meeting, you would see what the final recommendations to council were, if you can't wait for it to go in December. But since that was something you looked at for 2 or 3 meetings, we wanted to report back to you what the Planning Commission recommendation was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That said, are there any questions from the board?
Nope.
And so move. given this late hour. Is there a motion to adjourn at 8:10?
Second.
Great, thank you very much.